The following is a Michigan Sesquicentennial Year presentation.
There we are, tromping the cornfields, October 20th, the traditional pheasant opener in Michigan. Things have gotten pretty darn lean in the countryside. Fortunately, we have a mounted pheasant here on the wall of the cabin. Now, we did manage to scrape together a pheasant for our recipe. Got a tremendous Italian pheasant recipe coming up. Outdoor news, headlines, outdoors forever, a lot more. Stay tuned. I'm Fred Trost. It's Thursday night, time for Michigan Outdoors. From October 20th, 1987. Drizzling and raining. Poor scenting conditions for the dogs on this opening day of Michigan's pheasant season. And to make matters worse, the pheasant population has bottomed out to its lowest numbers in history. Tom Opry's English setter named Sam spends most of its hunting hours in the grouse woods for those little woodland birds. Tom Opry has been the outdoor editor of the Detroit Free Press for over 20 years. He's been out on every opening day, despite the dwindling pheasant numbers. And every year we ask ourselves the same question. Are pheasants more or less a memory now, or are we out here just because of the tradition?
Well, I never say anything nasty about traditions. I kind of happen to like them. I think traditions become so because they are of importance to a great number of people. And I don't like to give them up easily. But that's part of it. You're speaking of pheasants in the state of Michigan. Now, if you're speaking of pheasant hunting across the United States, it's far from over. I can tell you right now, the pheasant hunting in Iowa this year should be fantastic. I talked to a guy just yesterday, just got back from South Dakota, hunted south of Pierre with a group of guys, and I just had a fabulous hunt out there. So, good pheasant hunting exists in rather large measure yet around the United States. The fact that it's fallen off considerably here and Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Wisconsin doesn't mean that it's finished everywhere.
While other states still maintain decent and even good pheasant hunting, our southern Michigan ringnecks have been replaced by grouse and deer, two species that were uncommon in southern Michigan during the pheasant heydays. But there still can be found little pockets, little back 40s, small areas that seem to hold isolated populations of pheasants. The big question is, how do you find them?
I'll tell you, about the only thing you can do, considering how few birds there are left around, is if you're lucky enough to know people, as you and Bob obviously do, that have these little pockets of cover where pheasants, for some reason, have just survived handsomely. And if you can find those spots, and that takes a lot of scouting, you can have a pretty decent 2 or 3 days of pheasant hunting before all is gone for another year. But the number of people who are going to find them is small.
Do you have any inkling at all about how to find them? You know, the way we do is somebody calls and says, hey, we have a lot of birds out here. Mm-hmm. But could you tell this would be a pocket just by looking at the terrain?
Compared to a lot of other pockets that look like this around this part of the state, probably not. You just couldn't be sure. The thing to do would be to drive around until you see things like we have here. We got this nice heavy roosting cover up next to cornfield. You get good source of moisture. Of course, this morning there's plenty of moisture. It's a nice combination. You got winter cover, you got food, you have everything else a pheasant needs. You drive around, you see that. I suppose the only thing you do is knock on the door and say, gee, you ever see any pheasants in your backyard? And people that don't mind you hunting generally are pretty friendly about it. If they'll tell you if they see them or not.
What about somebody who doesn't have a dog? Says, I'm inspired. I think I know a pocket where there might be a few birds. Is it worth it anymore to hunt without a dog?
If you go to the right places, it's probably worth it. I never recommend, as a matter of course, that anybody hunt upland game birds without a dog. To me, a dog is what makes the hunt. Particularly if you and a partner, you want to maybe go out in the evening. Your best chance would be to find something like this, which is obviously roosting cover. And you get out there before dark, and I mean, if you're going to try to bang around through these cornfields back here, you're going to waste your time. The birds are going to run away from you. In fact, they're going to accomplish a good deal of that, even with dogs. But you get them into this roosting cover early in the morning, late in the day. That's a normal rule. You should be able to kick some birds up.
How do you work a field? We have a choice of cover around here. We've got some alfalfa fields just past the woods, a swampy area, some thick swale, some maybe roosting cover next to the cornfield. What's the Opry strategy? You have the dog.
Well, I'll tell you, Fred, I always figure the dog can scent a lot more out there than I can. I just kind of turn him loose and see where he goes. General rule of thumb, you start out early like this, you really do want to kick out your roosting fields first. The birds are more likely to be there. Another reason is if they've moved off into the corn and there's only you and your dog, or a few of you and a couple of dogs, depending on how big the corn is, then it's a whole other ball game. And once those birds get in that standing corn, there's just so many things they can do to avoid you and to even avoid a dog, unless you have a truly expert pheasant dog. And I don't know if there's enough pheasants left around to make truly expert dogs anymore. Big cornfields, by and large, probably the most successful method is just to have a group of guys. If you got 8 or 10 guys, and you can really drive a cornfield. I'm sure you've done shows on driving cornfields before.
We saw a number of pheasants fly on opening day, but the only one we saw in the game bag was taken by Bob Voisinette of Langsburg, and he didn't get it in the corn. Where is that bird? In your pouch. We'll get that bird out, Bob. Crying out loud.
Well, I can get him out.
A wild Michigan rooster? Still warm. Hot dog. Okay, tell me the big story. There's the vicarious
There's
thrill.
no big story. He's hiding down there underneath them vines.
After
And
how many-
wild berries, and there's a brush pile over there, and wild vines grew over it. He's hiding under there.
Now, the dog kick him out? Or?
No, I stepped down there, and how do you want? They're sitting pretty tight, though.
Well, how far away was he when you shot?
Oh, he didn't get too far away. I didn't let him get too far away from
Yeah,
me.
we heard just one shot.
No, Ron shot right after I did.
Oh, he did?
Yeah, immediately after, yeah. He was sitting tight.
Well, congratulations. As far as I know, this is the only Michigan ringneck that was taken opening day.
I think there's probably more than that.
Well, we don't know any different right now.
No.
Well, great. An opening day ringneck pheasant and a successful opening day pheasant hunter, both of them disappearing species in Michigan outdoors. Well, you saw the story on pheasant hunting, and that pretty much holds throughout the state. As far as ducks go, well, we have some good local duck hunting, according to BJ's down here in the Benton Harbor, St. Joe area. According to Bob Jarrett at the Duck Emporium down in the southeast, he says opening day was fantastic, but nobody's in the marsh now. They're still getting lots of ducks and geese up around Sebawing. In fact, this whole Fish Point area, Gales Bait and Tackle says that you can catch as many perch as you want to. Parsley's at Newego says they're getting limits of salmon in Muskegon River. And good smallmouth fishing. Captain Emil Dean that says that steelhead fishing is fantastic in the river. Chief Sport Shop says around Houghton Lake, scrapes are opening up. The rut is starting. Wellman's at Oscoda says they're getting limits of steelhead in the Akiak. Bucks are starting to move, according to Adrian's in the northeast corner of the lower peninsula. Bay Sports at Petoskey says steelhead are moving into Bear River, so steelhead's the hot one. Harry Reinfelder at Muskogee Bay says the local ducks, but no flight ducks. Bayshore Resort at Bay de Noc says they're getting limits of walleye in the bay. Archers are waiting for those big bucks, and everybody's buck hunting in the Keweenaw Peninsula, according to Dick Blau at Dick's Favorite Sports. They have some snow on the ground up there. Root Cellar around Lake Gogebic says they're getting limits of walleye, and small flocks of flight ducks have been moving in, and grouse hunting has been outstanding. And as far as deer goes, let's take a look at our trophy book. An unusually narrow rack from Jackson County. There are all kinds of small points protruding from the hair between the tines, but Paul Crawford from Jackson could justify at least 10, giving him a Stroh's Hunting Award for his opening day buck with a bow. Look at the tines on the beam on the left. Those tines curl every which way compared to the typical beam on the right. That's a 10-point, and that far-reaching abnormal tine on the left gives it an 18-inch outside spread. Happy hunter Scott George bagged it in Newego County with a bow. How about this for a massive rack? Again, from Jackson County, 10 points, but the mass and spread of this rack won't quit. James Carter from Detroit got lots of antlers and lots of venison. This buck weighed, get this, 242 pounds dressed. It's easy to forget fishing in the fall, but Captain Mark Martin is still helping his customers catch trophy walleye. Here, Paul Lampy from Grand Haven with a 29-incher, weighed over 9 pounds, caught at the time Mark Martin says those big walleye are feeding, 2:30 a.m. Back to bucks, looking towards opening day of firearm seasons. It's unlikely that Dwayne Stroshine from Drayton Plains will have an opening day as lucky as he had last year. Now, Pena County is where this buck came from. Hold it up to here from Drayton Plains. This was another opening evening buck.
Right. Yeah, I got this one in the evening and got this 6-point in the morning.
Earlier that morning?
Oh, yeah, 8 o'clock in the morning. Then I went out and bought another license and went back out. And this one came out just before dark. Came running across the field.
That's an outstanding record right there. Were you hunting private land up there?
Oh, yeah, farm country.
Congratulations. Hey, this guy got 2 bucks, and no, I'm not going to add them together. I think he's got enough points on the one. He's got himself a 10-pointer. Congratulations, Dwayne Stroshine. With a deer season coming up that looks like gangbusters, you just might join Dwayne one of these days as our Michigan Outdoors Big Buck Hunter of the Week.
Registered letters went out Monday notifying 130 lucky hunters that they were selected for elk permits. Now, permits were awarded this year by the number of applications from each zone. Upper Peninsula hunters got 3 permits, northern lower hunters got 36, and southern Michigan hunters received 91. Outdoors Forever got some great news last week from the Internal Revenue Service. The IRS ruled that Outdoors Forever is a 501c3 nonprofit tax-exempt organization, and that all contributions to Outdoors Forever are tax-deductible. The Hunter's Choice deer permits are being drawn this week and should be in the mail by next Wednesday. Unsuccessful applicants will also be notified, and that's important because the 9th of November, thousands of leftover permits will be available on a first-come, first-served basis for some southern Michigan areas. And this week, Detroit Free Press outdoor editor Tom Opry has some words of caution to sportsmen who donate to the Michigan Humane Society.
It used to be affiliated with the American Humane Society. Now it's affiliated with Humane Society of the United States. And Humane Society of the United States is the largest, most vitriolic, vociferous anti-hunting organization in the U.S. today. And when you donate $1 to the Michigan Humane Society, part of it may go for the pet problem, but another part of it's going to go to kill your sport of hunting. So keep that in mind when you make your donations. I've said that year after year after year, and I think a lot of people still don't know it yet. Of course, every time I say it, the Humane Society people get very angry, but that's tough.
John Scott is back as Fisheries Division Chief. Scott was sacked about a month ago after he ordered the burying of 150,000 live brook trout fingerlings in a UP landfill. Now, his return to command is straight out of Monty Hall's Let's Make a Deal. Scott agreed to drop his civil service case, retire next April, and in return was reinstated. And now that the bureaucratic side has been hashed out, it still leaves the state's fish program in a lurch. No doubt Scott will be the chief, but it will be in name only, while critical issues like the salmon crisis and the Belly Up Southern Michigan program remain unresolved. And for that reason, Director Gordon Geyer ought to get on the stick and get a new fish chief picked and ready to go ASAP. Delaying the selection of a new chief is bound to hurt morale, planning, and support for fisheries programs. A new chief picked soon won't have so far to swim upstream.
Well, Molly is kind of hot under these lights. She doesn't realize what a star she is for her accomplishment goose hunting with her owner, Jim Wellman of Howell. Jim, you called us up the other day and told us the craziest goose story I've ever heard. What is it?
Well, I was out hunting with a friend named Ed King, and a flock of geese come in and circled us once, landed, and Ed put them up, and they flew past me, and I knocked one down out of the group. And when my dog retrieved it, I was looking at it close, and I noticed 3 legs on it.
3-legged goose.
That ain't all.
Yeah?
I got back home where there was more light, and I was showing my father, and he pulled down this wing here and showed me a 4th leg.
A 4-legged goose. Incredible. Now, everybody I've told about this in the past day or so has said, it's got to be a hoax, but I've inspected this, and here are the 2 primary legs that it used. And these 2, you say they were folded like that?
Actually, this one was sitting over here, and they were not in use at all. They were just maybe a stool or something for him to sit on.
Just tight up against it. Now, they are firmly attached to bones. By flipping over this goose, looking at the back side, the tail is off center, and you can really feel the leg bones coming up through the back, the extra leg bones. Incredible story. We've talked to Charlie Fanta, who's an award-winning taxidermist here in East Lansing. He says he'll mount this as a flying mount with this little landing gear folded up on the extra two legs. We'll see if we can't get an award-winning mount out of this. We'll have it up at our museum part of the time up in Houghton Lake. And we'll make a star out of Molly.
That sounds
She
great.
did something. What a heck of a story.
Very happy.
Jim, I know you're a big hunter, and you're going after that big buck down there in Livingston County.
You got it.
Hope to see you on Big Buck Night.
All righty. Thank you, Fred.
You know, Fred, we get some really interesting letters in the
Oh, I know.
mail.
Not too many about fishing at this time of year, though.
Well, this one is from Todd Barnum of Pinconning, writes and says, wants to know, why do big perch bite so lightly?
Well, you know, Todd, a lot of people wonder why the bigger fish bite seems a lot more lightly than the smaller ones. Here, we were on opening day of pike season 2 years ago with taxidermist Randy DeZormo up in St. Mary's River. He caught a perch that didn't smack the bait. The reason is the big fish come up and open their mouths and they tend to suck in the bait, whether it's a minnow or whatever. And the smaller fish are the ones that are more competitive. After you can see this with bluegills in the shallows when you're looking at little teeny bluegill. They're running in and trying to grab it from each other, but a perch that size, that one we have up at the museum, by the way, in Houghton Lake, a perch that size will tend to just sort of come up on the bait and suck it in.
They don't get to be that big if they
No,
rush
don't.
in and grab the
And
bait.
a lot of them, you know, spit that bait out too, and you never know they were there. You know, one thing I want to mention real quickly here, for our Big Buck Nighter, for qualifying for a Stroh's Hunting Award, you can have 10 points on a rack for a buck, or I have another way this year that you can qualify. That is a total of points and spread to equal 28. Put a 1-inch ring on the points, and if it goes and you get a, say, 7 points here with a 21-inch spread, you'll get a Stroh's Hunting Award.
This one just qualifies.
That's right, it does. Now, here's a question that might buffalo you here in our outdoor quiz.
Most big game animals will stand or lie with their backs to the wind during a storm. Which large North American mammal faces into the wind instead? The bison or buffalo has long hair to protect its foreparts, making it more comfortable to face a storm, unlike most animals.
How would you continue shooting or even hunting from a wheelchair if you became disabled? Don Basie from Temperance hunted all his life until an accident 11 years ago. His legs are totally paralyzed, but his arms have partially recovered. Now, they're weak, but Catherine Mulhaupt found that with certain guns, Don can continue his lifelong hobbies of hunting and shooting.
To be able to shoot, I found that if I've just got something that's lightweight, a little shorter barrel, fits my needs perfectly. I have this particular one here is a Model 7 Remington. It's something that Remington came out with about 3 years ago. It's a lightweight, weighs around 6¼ pounds. This particular one's in a 6mm caliber. Also equipped with a 3-9 compact Leopold scope on it. And I find with the lightweight, the short barrel enables me to do some target practicing right out of the chair here, just by resting my elbow on one of the armrests. Makes a very good gun for woodchuck hunting, also a good deer hunting gun. If you're not in a brushy area, it's an all-around good gun, lightweight.
A lightweight gun with a short barrel isn't front heavy, which Don would have difficulty holding up. His favorite gun is one with a modified stock.
This is a gun that I had made before my accident. It's a thumb hole stock. It's a Lawson. This particular brand is a Lawson. This is thumb hole stock. Has it's also a cast onto the stock, which means it's offset, and it just an all-around good gun. It is very useful to me, and it was useful before my accident. And with a thumb hole stock, it enables me to get a better grip on it, especially from shooting from a bench rest. And I'm able to absorb some of the recoil, being this is a 30-06. I use some hand loads, and I tend to load them up on the hot side. And I find out that from shooting from a bench, this really is my ticket.
Now you can also shoot offhand out in the field?
I shoot offhand. Also the same way I use the 6mm, by resting my elbow on the wheelchair and just sighting down, and I'm able to shoot like that.
So these are guns that are available to just about anybody?
Yeah, certainly anybody that wanted to or get back out in the range shooting. Even if you can't get back out in the field like you used to, try getting back out on the range. You know, with this, I'm able to wheel up and get on next to the bench and still do some shooting off the bench. You can find yourself a gun club, belong to a gun club. Maybe you can get some of the members to help you to the bench. Maybe you won't even need any help to the bench. But myself, if I can get to the bench from a wheelchair, I can still shoot like I used to. I use no special equipment, just in getting out and shooting again.
Don Basie doesn't go on his annual Western big game hunts anymore, but he has found his shooting days are not over. He's an example of a sportsman who's determined to enjoy the outdoors forever. What should it taste like? If you're describing to somebody, I got this recipe, they say, what does it taste like?
It's a real rich recipe taste. I love this recipe. I may even try to use it in the restaurant. I'm really excited about it. Matter of fact, I'm going to taste some right here if I can. It is very good. Yes.
John MacKenzie is the owner and head chef of Coyle's restaurant in Houghton Lake, right next to our new hunting and fishing museum. And he's raving about a recipe from our cookbook he just prepared called Italian Pheasant with Noodles, submitted by Kathy Hunsanger from Lapeer. It begins with boneless pheasant breast, which is relatively easy to bone out using a good sharp fillet knife. If you don't have pheasant, chicken can be a real good substitute. Probably won't have the delicate flavor of pheasant breast, but John MacKenzie says pheasant and chicken recipes are interchangeable. He ought to know he's cooked plenty of both. A couple wedges of fresh lemon provide the best juice to sprinkle on the strips of the white breast meat. Oregano, basil are the Italian herbs that give a mild spicing to the meat. And a sprinkling of salt and pepper round out the spices. Now don't add too much salt because you're going to have plenty of salt in the butter, which you're going to melt in the skillet. In goes the seasoned pheasant breast along with 1 diced onion. Now these you want to fry in an open skillet until they're golden brown. Should take 5 to 7 minutes on moderate heat. Now at this point, if you wanted to snitch a bite right here, you might get carried away. On rice, this would be an excellent stir fry just the way it is. But Kathy's recipe calls for a cup of chicken broth right from the can. Turn down the heat and simmer the meat and broth for about 10 minutes. Then comes the cheese, mozzarella, at least 4 ounces. You might want to add more. Slices, chunks, or grated, it doesn't matter because you mix this in for a few minutes until it melts. Now you can leave the lid on for a minute or so to melt it. Doesn't matter, it's going to turn out terrific. Pour this delectable mixture over your favorite noodles. That's a dish your family and friends will long remember. John says he's thinking of adding this to his menu at Coyle's using chicken breasts. That's a high compliment to Kathy Hunsanger from Lapeer and her Italian pheasant with noodles. An easy-to-make dish that no doubt tickles the daylights out of Bob Garner's palate.
Well, it does more than that, Fred. This recipe is delicious. It's not heavily seasoned. It's delightful. It says corn stubble, wheat stubble, little pocket of cattails, you know, dogs working it. Great fall recipe. Super
It is,
recipe.
and I can't
So
imagine.
tender, like Bob says.
And anybody who wouldn't like it.
Oh, no.
Because of the cheese.
Make it
very
this
delicate.
Make it this weekend. There's a little chill in the air.
I ate mine first.
Freddie ate his.
I'm all that. Oh yeah, I've cleaned mine out. That's the recipe, folks. You can, yeah, if you don't have pheasants, use chicken, use grouse, use rabbit,
Turkey.
use squirrel. Yeah,
That's
it'll
right.
be great. Whatever you do, get outdoors this weekend. It's a great place to be. See you next week.
Anything John MacKenzie of Coyle's prepares is great, and this recipe is no exception. Italian pheasant with noodles, along with the rest of the September-October recipe.
Your dog or a few of you and a couple of dogs, depending on how big the corn is, then it's a whole other ball game. And once those birds get in that standing corn, there's just so many things they can do to avoid you and to even avoid a dog, unless you have a truly expert pheasant dog. And I don't know if there's enough pheasants left around to make truly expert dogs anymore. Big cornfields, by and large, probably the most successful method is just to have a group of guys. If you got 8 or 10 guys, and you can really drive a cornfield. I'm sure you've done shows on driving cornfields before.
We saw a number of pheasants fly on opening day, but the only one we saw in the game bag was taken by Bob Voisinette of Langsburg, and he didn't get it in the corn. Where is that bird? In your pouch. We'll get that bird out, Bob. Crying out loud.
Oh, you can get him out.
of Michigan.